The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to version 11 pre-release briefing for our Veeam Cloud and Service Provider partners. My name is Kate. I'm Senior Cloud and Service Provider Specialist here at Veeam. On the webinar with me, I have two amazing Veeam technical experts, Ivan, Senior Cloud System Engineer, and Peter, Cloud Solution Architect. A few housekeeping items before we get started. You are all on mute and will remain this way for the duration of the meeting. This webinar is being recorded and you will get a follow-up email with a recording and slides. We also welcome your engagement, so feel free to ask questions or share your feedback on v11 features in the Q&A panel. In today's session, we are going to talk about customer challenges that we see on the market. Then Ivan will present key features coming in version 11 and discuss what capabilities were released. And after that, Peter will step in and demo cool features of the new release. Just so you know, this is EMEA-wide webinar, and we have people joining us from many different EMEA countries. Regional sales and system engineer contacts will be provided to each of you in the follow-up. You can also reach out to us via hosting.emea@veeam.com, and we will make sure your request is addressed by the local Veeam representative. So before we go to version 11, I would like to quickly talk about our customers. 2020 has been a challenging year for many different businesses, causing them to reevaluate data protection and management strategies and to look for sustainability and insurance for the business. Understanding customer challenges is key as it helps us and our partners provide better support to customers and ensure they have better experience. Zero tolerance for downtime and data loss is one of the key challenges customers are facing, and helping them solve challenges has always been a key driver for our R&D team. And with the release of version 11, we took it down to zero tolerance for downtime and data loss. The next is ransomware. It's a concern for everyone. Last year, we ran so many webinars dedicated to this topic, and we'll continue doing so. Here at Veeam, we eliminate some of these concerns by ensuring that backup data is safe from ransomware and malicious attacks. Another challenge is about meeting compliance and retention goals. Some verticals, especially healthcare, are required to retain data for many, many years. And our goal is to help customers stay compliant without inflating their costs. Recovery. Being able to recover the data despite storage or staff constraints is what customers are looking for, and you, our partners, and us need to make sure we provide necessary recovery capabilities to clients. In addition to that, focus has shifted to home offices, and customers have realized how critical it is to protect data that resides at home. So how do we do this, you ask? How do we help customers eliminate all these challenges? Definitely by working together, by combining Veeam products with your backup and DR as a service expertise. This is the key to our success. We value our partnership, and we know that together we can solve customer challenges. So with that, let's review the key capabilities of version 11 and how the new version addresses customer challenges. In this launch, there is over 150 new and enhanced capabilities. We don't mind being here with you the whole day talking about this incredible release, but since we are limited on time, we will start with top 5 features. During the session, we are going to talk about CDP, Continuous Data Protection, the feature we all have been waiting for a while. Hardened Linux repository, all about security. Nowadays, we can't host a single webinar without highlighting the importance of security. We are also investing further into our object storage integrations, introducing new support for AWS Glacier and Azure Archive. We expanded our instant recovery, the core function of Veeam that has been with us since the beginning, to databases and NAS. Finally, with the upcoming release of Veeam Backup and Replication version 11, comes the new version of Veeam native Vcloud Director plugin. This edition has been a big hit with service providers, as it allows them to integrate Veeam self-service portal directly into the Vcloud Director interface. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ivan to lead the discussion around key v11 features.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Kate, for such a nice introduction and such important information for our VCSPs. So we'll start with the CDP today, with continuous data protection. So for those of you who've been using Veeam for a while, you may have probably heard of it already. So it took us, a little longer than expected to finally release this feature. And version 11, it's the release when CDP will be finally here at your service. So continuous data protection, why does it need it actually? So we have backup engine, and with backup engine, you can have a backup policy of RPO of 24 hours, 12 hours, 6 hours, even less in some cases. We have replication engine, which been here for a while. It allows you to have RPO down to minutes in really great scenarios. In other scenarios, it will be hours. So why CDP? Continuous data protection actually allows you to have an instant RTO similar to our instant recovery engine or to our replication failover engine with minimum data loss. So RPO instead of minutes is just seconds. So that's a game changer when it comes to tier 1 applications, which you might be running in your hosting data center, or which your customers might be running and asking you to have the maximum possible level of protection of machines. In addition to that, as we're leveraging the VMware VIO framework, so basically it's intercepting the input-output of the virtual machine and redirecting it to the secondary location, basically to the replica, which is being utilized. So by utilizing those native capabilities of vSphere, we are able to provide that service with minimum impact to the actual production virtual machines of your customers or of your own internal machines. So how does it actually work? From the architecture overview. So at the top of it, to get started with that, first you need to install CDP filters on your vSphere clusters. So basically go to the properties of your vCenters. There is an additional step to it called CDP filters. And together with filters, which are installed directly on the virtual machines which are getting processed, there is a daemon, basically a service, running on the each ESXi host, which is utilizing the CDP service. From the Veeam perspective, it's a coordinator service, which is responsible for making sure that all of the virtual machines which will be processed by CDP policies have filter installed, that all of the policies are meeting the RPO criteria you have set in the job settings, and all of the management tasks. When it comes to transferring data, we actually have multiple options. So setting aside the competition, where in some cases you need to install a proxy, CDP proxy per host basis. With Veeam implementation, you can actually have a proxy, a single proxy for multiple hosts, because we can utilize both VM bus if proxy is virtual and located on the same host, or LAN if we're talking about physical proxies. So by utilizing two different concepts, we can actually have ability to start small and then grow big. So you can start small, have one proxy on source, one on target, try out the CDP for several virtual machines, then grow it over. And once you reach the maximum capacity of a single proxy, deploy more proxies, scale out on that, and as a result, protect more virtual machines using CDP. But I can say straight away that this service is for for critical VMs of your customers or your own virtual machines running application servers or whatever, where data loss is actually it's mission critical to lose as least data as possible during the restore. So journaling data is basically the information, the changes which are happening within the virtual machines, which are getting transferred to the secondary location, to the target of our application. So on the target side, again, we have the same filters, so the same daemon. So all of that basically is mirrored from the source side. So when it comes to retention, you have actually multiple options. So first of all is you have short-term retention with a minimum of 2 seconds. Recommendations based on our internal tests is for most of the workloads is 15 seconds of RPO. You know, to constantly meet the RPO, you will have new metrics available in the job settings as well as in job results to accommodate that. And it's important to mention that those restore points, this CDP technology is crash consistent. What does it mean? It means that the restore points, if we may say, which you are creating on the target, actually are not application consistent. And in the case of databases, it might be in the middle of the transaction, the point was created. So it's the database during the failover phase may be in the middle of the transaction state, so it's in not fully consistent state. However, to help you out with that, to cover those scenarios with with applications with using VSS and so on, we have a long-term retention option. So this option is also utilizing CDP. However, during the journal entry creation, during the restore point creation, we do actually perform guest processing. So as a result, you can combine within the single CDP policy both crash consistent as well as application consistent restore points. So it's one job to cover both use cases, to have either application fully consistent if it's transaction should be transactionally aware, or to have just the latest possible state when the the problem has just happened and you have absolutely minimum of data loss. So as of failover capabilities, it's all familiar coming from our regular application. You have failover now option just to spin up the virtual machine immediately. And you have add to failover plan to have, to have a failover plan with a list of machines with a certain order under which the machines should be started and unified within the single plan to accommodate the same, the same purpose. So for example, it's a web server front end and back end could be added into a single failover plan. So you can failover to the latest state, obviously just to get the minimal data loss point in time, where you can select the either crash consistent point, and you can even use this toggle, to go left and right and pick the particular restore point, or long-term retention with the application consistent restore points, because they're performed less often, but they might be still needed in some scenarios, as I have mentioned. So as a failback, there is actually something new to that as well. So previously, when you performed the failback, it was done in fully automated fashion. So you couldn't control when the failback actually happens. It's just transferring data back. And once it reaches a certain threshold, we just stun the virtual machine and put the the last portion of data to the original machine and get it started. So that's a really small period. So now you can actually, schedule this failback procedure to do it, for example, during the off hours, or you can even do it manually in case, if it's really sensible, to perform it in a certain moment of time. So all of it, it's important to mention that, this is a vSphere only technology, as we're using vSphere framework for that. So, in the first version for our service providers, you can consider it as a fully managed service for your customers or for your own part of the environment. So next up, it's archive tier. So we had our story with object storage actually for quite a while now, since 9.5 update 4, and actually it's been a really successful one. So we had our capacity tier released back in 9.5 update 4 to allow you to move all these backups to the secondary location to the object storage. But then with version 10 we enabled copy mode, so you can have immediate copy of data from your regular disk-based repositories onto the object storage. So you have 2 copies of data to meet the requirement for your hosting needs, let's say, or to have a secondary repository for your Cloud Connect backups just to be fully protected. So now we're extending the story even further with the allowance of having an archive tier. Archive tier supports Amazon Glacier, including Deep Archive, as well as Azure Blob Storage Archive tier. So it's important to mention straight away that that Amazon S3, that in case of Glacier, it's only Amazon S3 to Glacier. In case of Azure Blob, it's only Azure Blob to Azure Archive tier. So S3 compatible storage for such scenario is not supported. We'll discuss in details later on. So it's all policy based. Again, you just set an interval when the data should be transferred to this, the cheapest possible option of storage which public cloud can offer. Those backups are put in a cost optimized way. We again will cover that later, and as well as save space. So basically, the same thing in a way. And those backups will be self-sufficient. So in case you lose capacity tier as well as the performance tier, you can still have your standalone backups running on the archive tier. So I would say that it's a little bit like a tape replacement for those of you who have, searching the ways to have any secondary media to put the data on, even possibly cheaper than tape on, and then as an alternative to tape. So for Glacier, as you can see that we have, it's added in the same wizard-driven basis, really similar experience. However, you have to deploy a proxy appliance. Why do we need it? We need proxy appliance in order to put the data on this deep archive on Glacier in a more effective manner. So basically, we're putting the data into a bigger objects. So we take the backup, we read through that, we change the the size of each object in order to have less write operations on the actual object storage. So it's not that easy, just to support it as with the regular object storage. You have to come up with a way to reprocess the data and put it in the most effective way. So then, as the move from the capacity tier to archive tier is done, you can also enable immutability. So basically for Amazon S3, now you have immutability on your capacity tier layer as well as on your archive tier layer. So as of Azure Archive, it's a really similar story. Again, we're using temporary proxy appliance, which allows you to to move the data and to basically recompile the backups to fit to reduce the amount of space used on the archive tier, and just put the backups in the most effective manner. So when you put the backups there, you can actually have an option to enable all of the backups to be put as standalone full backups, so basically as active full. Or if you don't enable that, then your full backups on archive tier will be, let's say, block cloned or block linked. Those of you who have been using ReFS for a long time, you may know it. So basically, each second and third and fourth, full backup will not require any space apart from unique blocks which are utilized there. All of the other blocks will be just linked to the previous backup. So as of data retrieval, again, options are provided by the public cloud vendor. You have 3 types of the restore, depending on the requirements and the RPO defined by the customer, RTO defined by the customer. So you can retrieve data in case of expedited restore of 1 to 5 minutes, so access it really quickly. With standard, it will take longer, and with bulk restores, it will take even longer than that. So of course, the pricing is also different depending on this option. For us, the goal here is to give you as much flexibility as possible to build the offering for your customers with the cheapest storage, option available. So as of immutability, again, it works just the same way as the capacity tier, the S3 immutability. So we're putting an object lock on the files which are just getting transferred, and that's just enabled through the one checkbox. So as of the other object storage enhancements, worth mentioning that we have finally supported Google Object Storage. So with Google Object Storage, it's just the same way as a capacity tier to our object storage, S3 compatible, and Azure Blob support. So it's not an archive tier; it's just a capacity tier support here. And one more thing I'd like to mention is that we have just released Veeam Backup for Google Cloud Platform. Currently, it's version 1, so the support for and integration with backup replication is limited to an external repository option. However, we're planning to have the same journey as we have with AWS, when as a result you have a full integration and VBR server as a center of it. So you have VBR server as a center, and all of the public cloud appliances are deployed centrally. All of the jobs are visible from one location, and so on. So next up is expanded instant recovery. Here we actually bring not one but three, new features, I'd say. So it's instant recovery of any backup to Hyper-V to enable those of you who have Hyper-V data centers to allow you to migrate customers on-premise physical workloads and restore them, let's say, as virtual machines onto your Hyper-V data center. Same comes, Linux agents and so on. So the result here is that you can build a fully portable service for your customers, which can, enable full data portability for your customers. And this is really helpful in the case of migration, in the case when you as a service provider have multiple different virtualization platforms running, and some other cases as well. So then NAS backup contents, you can now publish them instantly. So we released NAS backup in version 10. So with the version 11, we're bringing a similar functionality to instant recovery. Why it's only publishing? Because you cannot modify the contents of the published file share. Basically, it's a read-only SMB share. It's still, really beneficial for in the case when you have, you need to publish some customers' data and make it available for them just for reading purposes and so on. And then you can then restore it. Also, we have some pricing changes on NAS backup, so stay tuned for the Kate's presentation in the end. And instant recovery of SQL and Oracle databases. We had our publish feature available in Veeam Explorer for SQL and Oracle for quite some time. So now we're continuing that with the full instant recovery option, which allows you to spin up the database as quickly as possible and then migrate it to production once you are off hours. From the UI perspective, it's all pretty straightforward. Just you have one additional option at your hand when it comes to restore, let's say, vSphere virtual machine in this case. So all wizard driven and pretty easy. Now you have a table of from which platform to which you can actually perform a restore. And in case of vSphere and Hyper-V, now you can restore any backup to that platform with instant recovery engine, while other platforms are still supported via restore to Azure option or restore to AWS. So you pretty much can be portable with the workloads of your customers, restore it from one platform to another, and it should work just fine. Where this can be utilized for the service provider. So let's say you have a Cloud Connect deployment, as well as the Hyper-V data center on the target. So you're protecting your Hyper-V data center with the hosting backup replication server, and also you have a Cloud Connect with a cloud repository connected to it. So to a hosting VBR server, you can add cloud repository as a local one, and as a result, see all of the backups of your customers. If those backups are not encrypted, you can immediately initiate a restore to your hosting environment. If those are encrypted, then customer has to pass you a password for the encryption password from the backups in order to perform that migration. So it can be used as a managed service for migration from customers on premises to the hosting data center, as well as in some other scenarios like cold DR, let's say, something along those lines. So the story so far is that we have now a continuous data protection for the vSphere platform. We have even more options around instant recovery to enable better data management across the platforms, as well as enhanced our object storage support, because we see that there is a huge demand among the customers and the service providers to have more features around it. But the story doesn't end here. We actually have many more features to cover. So let's talk about management a little. First of all, we are constantly improving our engine, backup engine, because backup is a bread and butter for us, and the performance of our backup is something which is well known among our partners and customers. So we are enabling async read everywhere, which is beneficial for enterprise-grade storage. And as well, together with NUMA awareness, so when you have multi-CPU setup on your when you have a multi-repository setup, you can use that together and have a better backup performance. You can check the latest digest from Anton Gostev, where they shared the results of a certain setup used by the customers in the field to test out Veeam performance on version 11. So it all comes down to just a better performance overall. Backup copy retention, we're just simplifying that to get rid of the copy intervals and all of that, which was not really convenient for our customers and not really easy to follow. And persistent guest agent allows you to reduce the number of ports utilized on your customer side. So as of UI enhancements, again, it's actually several features to go through. So first of all, it's no need for local administration anymore on the backup console. So you can install backup console anywhere, and if your backup admin is not, administrator for the machine, it's no longer a problem. It's high priority jobs. So now if you have customers who, let's say VIP customers who should have, jobs prioritized over the other ones, you can enable high priority jobs, and that might be helpful, to have a backup for critical workloads, over prioritized in terms of using resources over other backup jobs. Restores are still more prioritized than high priority jobs, but restore is always mission critical thing. vSphere tags, it's something a personal favorite from our architect Luca De Loca. It's been, he's been requesting this for quite a while now, and basically this feature allows to enable multiple tags for a single job. And as a result, if you have, let's say, a bronze tag assigned to some virtual machines, but you don't need to back up all of them, you can assign also backup tag on those machines which you need to back up, and have a job which is, let's say, bronze backup, and add both tags to the job. So it will be bronze and backup. So it's, let's say, an AND argument. Custom filter views, again, just a quality of life improvement for those who have a lot of jobs within a single backup replication server. So as of Enterprise Manager, a couple of improvements in there. First of all, there has been a long-term request to have it translated to other languages. Initially, the request came from the Japanese Veeam team, because in certain markets the requirements to have a local language are higher than other ones. So here we have really a huge audience listening to us right now and speaking English, but when it comes to customers, some of them prefer local languages, of course. So now you can have an enterprise manager running the local language for your market, and same comes for the self-service portal, which we'll talk later on. The second one is Saml for vSphere self-service portal. So initially, this feature was developed actually for enterprises, and we saw that there is a huge traction among our service providers who don't use VMware Cloud Director, but still want to give self-service for their customers. And before that, we had only we only allowed have domain joined vCenter and domain users to be added as a self-service users. So now we're extending that to the external users, so we can use a third-party, identity provider to log in onto the self-service portal. So for a customer, it will be, probably a single sign-on experience where they can go to visit and check their backup activities, create new jobs, perform the restores on their own. So now we'll move on to VMware Cloud Director module. Actually, there is, again, multiple features to talk about, some quality of life improvements. And first, it's already mentioned by Kate, it's a native plugin. So initially, plugin was developed by one of our Veeam architects from the US, and it's been really, heavily requested by a lot of partners to have an official one, to officially supported one, because for the service providers, it's always critical to have an ability, to be supported for each feature they use. And so that, listening to that feedback, we have decided to officially support that plugin and add some features on top of that. So now you can have some VApps, you can open context menu, select Veeam data protection, and add VApp to the backup. So we'll have more actions available in the future, but for version 11, it's exactly the same portal as you can find in the current version, but now it's integrated into the VMware Cloud Director console. Why it's beneficial? Because your customers no longer need to log into two different websites to perform VM's related activities as well as Veeam data protection tasks. So they can now do it from a single portal. And also it's helpful in some scenarios where you are using multiple, when you're using, let's say, multi-factor authentication on the VMware Cloud Director. So we create a secondary user, specific user for each organization. And this user is only, like a technical one, which is only utilized by Veeam service in order to perform the login through the plugin. So next up, it's multiple quotas per VCD organizations. Again, it's been requested from our providers. Currently, in version 10 and before that, you can only have one repository per one VCD organization. Now you can have multiple. You just add the same organization again and pick a different repository for them. It actually enables several nice use cases and potential services for your customers. So let's say that if your customer decides to wants to have two copies of data instead of one copy of data on their repository, you can add a second repository for them with the object storage connected to it. So customer now has a regular repository as well as the repository with a capacity tier connected to it. So customer can decide either they want to have two copies of their data of the certain machine or one copy. And so they can define that on a per job basis. Also, it's helpful when you have multiple data centers with a single Vcloud Director, and you need to cross backup basically from one location to another one. Next up, it's Vcloud to Vcloud replication. Actually, this feature speaks for itself. It uses well-known replication engine, snapshot-based replication, which has been here for a while. It's not CDP yet, not yet CDP aware. It's not CDP policy. It's just a regular replication. But now it can copy all of the VApp configuration, VApp networking, and everything which is related, to the Cloud Director metadata. So why it's helpful? Because again, you can copy, have a disaster recovery option for a data center to copy some of the machines of your customers to a secondary Vcloud Director location. In the first version, it will not be available in the self-service portal. So it's like a managed service, but still it's beneficial for migration cases. It's beneficial for cases when the customer just wants to have 100% available with RTO close to zero copy of their virtual machine on secondary location. And as our Veeam licensing doesn't cover the same virtual machine twice, if customer already backs up this machine, you can replicate it elsewhere and it will be like free of charge, the replication option, because the machine is already protected by Veeam license. So next up, platform improvements. So platform improvements come with the first and the foremost Linux repository hardening option. So this option actually was initially, I think, provided as a feedback on our forums, as an idea. So what we have used is we are using now immutable flag as an extended attribute on each file which we put on the Linux repository. So how to enable Linux repository hardening? So when you add your Linux server, which will be a repository, instead of using a regular Linux account or Linux private key, you use single-use credentials. So those single-use credentials, you create a user, which Veeam service or Veeam daemon will use running on the Linux repository, and then you basically disable this user elsewhere. So by that, we have now a user which can set a flag, but no one can access this user from elsewhere, from other locations, or even logging into the same Linux server. So only at this point, only root can disable it. And so if you follow a certain guideline, and disable root user external login, you can, Veeam service can set the flags for immutable backups, but no one can remove those backups until the interval is reached. In this case, it's 7 days. And so if added in the correct manner, if we will publish some of the articles on which how to follow the strategy of immutable backups. The idea is that you have to have a time source available for a Linux server, which cannot be disrupted anyhow, and you need to have a user which no one can log in using that. So this temporary user performs actual write operation and sets the flag on each file. By using this flag on the file system, no one can remove it from elsewhere. So if you initiate the removal of the backup from the backup replication console, it will fail because of its immutable storages. By logging in onto the Linux repository itself, again, no other user can remove the other users and immutable flags until the time interval has reached. The time for immutable flag has expired. So why it's important? Why it's important in this era of malware and ransomware attacks on our customers and on our service providers? Because before that we had immutability for our capacitor, but capacitor is a secondary backup option. What about main backup option? So main repository. And with main repository, with Windows, you don't have similar things, but for Linux, this immutable flags on the files are really, beneficial to have an additional time to research and to find out if the backup system or if the backend was, maliciously attacked. So you have more time to find out if anyone is disrupting your environment, and no one can remove the data from the repository while this flag lasts. So one more thing talking about quality of life improvement is Linux file restore without helper appliance. So now, before you could only deploy a pre-built virtual appliance. And so with physical only environments, it was really painful. You had to deploy a separate Hyper-V host or something like that to perform restore actions for Linux machines. Now you can pick any Linux host. You can just configure it once, set the firewall configuration, set the necessary permissions to that machine, and just leave it there. Before, this appliance was always redeployed and so on, so it wasn't really convenient to use. We had some support tickets because of that and so on. So now it's finally resolved in this manner. You can still utilize a pre-built virtual appliance, and it was also rebuilt for version 11. And not to mention, again, there are some code rewrite under the hood, so you can expect some performance improvements coming from the helper host. So talking about Linux backup proxy modes, previously we had only virtual appliance mode. With version 11, we are bringing direct storage access. So for those of you who have proxies, let's say physical proxies directly connected to underlying storages of the vSphere infrastructure, or network mode, which might be beneficial in case you don't have proxy per cluster, proxy per host. So now you have basically a very similar list of options compared to our Windows proxies, with the same or better in some cases performance. And overall, it's beneficial when it comes to saving on licensing costs for your customers, Cloud Connect replication, target proxies, as well as other scenarios. Let's say when you have dedicated proxies and you don't want to spend more on licensing. So what about Cloud Connect? Cloud Connect is a well-known engine which most of you are using already for receiving backups from your customers, for checking out the information on the for performing tasks related to Veeam Service Provider console, remote management, remote monitoring, and reporting. So with Cloud Connect, we are supporting the features which you already have for your regular backup replication installation. So it's Linux proxy modes for Cloud Connect replication, Linux repository hardening. So now you can protect your backups not only by using insider protection. So if customer removes the backups put on the recycle bin folder, now you can also utilize this option to protect the data, without moving it elsewhere. So customer cannot remove it during the time when the immutable flag is set. So as of scale out archived here, so again, a secondary option, that even cheaper way of storing the data, which most likely will never get accessed by the customer, but just needs to be there in order to meet compliance and regulatory requirements. Capacity Google Cloud support and GFS for agents. Again, some of the quality of life improvements. As of something new, you can now evacuate using PowerShell data of a single tenant, of specific jobs, of multiple tenants, and so on, using PowerShell. You can retain backup file names in case you're managing your customers. You need to, understand what backup data they have copied and understand which backups belongs to which chain and so on, not to have those names, shifted. Now you can enable the checkbox to allow remote management by the service provider on the customer side, and as a result, the backups will be written in the plain manner. So you will see all of the file names as the virtual machines named on the customer side. And it's Veeam Agent for Mac, which is supported through the Veeam Service Provider console. We'll have a dedicated webinar on that, so stay tuned. Kate will talk a little bit more about upcoming webinars. So overall, I have to say that Service Provider console is one of our key focuses for our service provider communities. We're trying to bring more and more features into that when it comes to reporting, monitoring, and being able to manage more and more different flavors of agents. And that way we're trying to allow you to have more managed services, to have a transparency of the data, of how much data was backed up, to have API available as well. But we'll have a whole dedicated webinar on that, so I'll not deep dive into service provider console topic. So as of the public cloud story, we have released AWS version 3 back in version previous year. So AWS version, Veeam backup for AWS version 3 included VPC backup as well as RDS protection. So with Azure version 2, we now support rental licensing, centralized appliance deployment directly from the Veeam backup replication server, as well as the job sessions. So you can see all of them within the single backup replication console. Veeam backup for Azure version 2 is planned to be released, somewhere together with version 11 release. So stay tuned for that. And Veeam backup for Google Cloud, which I've mentioned already, is currently on version 1, not yet fully integrated with Veeam backup replication, so it doesn't support rental licensing yet. So last but not least, automation. So a long time no see PowerShell module for backup replication. We had been using Snap-in for quite a while, and Snap-in is an outdated method of using utilizing PowerShell commandlets. So basically, by implementing and having a module, now it's much more portable, easier to use, and actually, finally, we are moving to a truly decoupled module here. So now you need to install backup console in order to utilize the module, but in the future, I think, are planning to remove this limitation as well. And last but not least, Restful API for the backup replication. It's built on open, API, and here we want to cover what is missing in the current Enterprise Manager Restful API. So from the backup replication API, you can create jobs, you can modify jobs, mass deploy the components, proxies, repositories, and do it from the, in a JSON manner, not in XML, but in JSON. So it's really convenient to use. We are planning to, with the next version, improve with, the RESTful API for VPR, matching the functionality of the UI or of the PowerShell where you can do those sections. So, and now we'll move to the demo presented by the one and only Peter. And before that, if I can, ask Kirill, we can launch a small poll if we have a minute to check out what is the most exciting feature for you in the version 11.
Few more seconds to
All right.
load. Yeah. And I am closing the poll.
All right, so we have actually, pretty equal spread among the results. So that's really interesting. Thank the guys for the participating, and guys and girls. Thanks everyone for participating. And I'm passing the word to Peter. Passing the permissions to Peter.
All right, let's make this quick and painless. There we go. All right. Can you see the screen, Ivan?
Yes, I can see the screen.
Okay, good. If you can see it, then I suppose everybody can see it. So that should be fine. All right, let's quickly jump into a short demo of CDP, Vcloud Plugin, and Linux repository. So as you can hopefully read on the screen, I have a version 11 VBR installed here, and I have configured CDP. Yeah? So now how do we get this CDP policy showing up? Yeah? For example, if I show you standard, we have backup and replication, but CDP doesn't just pop up. We first need to install this IO filter. Yeah? So this is being done on the vCenter cluster. Yeah? Or I can just here click on the vCenter, select the Manage IO filters, and it will load the clusters that I have available, and I can select where I would like to install it. Basically, I select the clusters that I want to use where those VMs are running, that I want to replicate every X seconds or minutes, and it will push the IO filter there. Yeah. So this generally takes like a minute or two maximum. And then we can go and have a look into vSphere. Yeah. So in the vSphere client, we can look on the ESXi host, for example, under configure, IO filters, and there we find this IO filter installed. Yeah, so make sure that you have this in place. Should not be an issue if the wizard completed successfully, right? So then we are ready to use it. Yeah, so here I have a couple of virtual machines here. These two actually that I can replicate. Yeah? So if I go to my VBR installation, and I have CDP, let's just walk through a job. So for example, many of you will see that this is almost the same, or let's say 90% the same as a standard replication job. Yeah? So in my case, I have created two jobs because maybe as a service provider, you would like to have different policies depending on the SLA for your customers. Yeah, so for example, I put the policy 30 and the policy 120, and then based on the tag in VMware, it will pick up the virtual machines with this specific tag, and it will put it in the job that will replicate it every 30 seconds with CDP. Yeah? So that makes it also very dynamic. So then you can just update vSphere and you don't have to do anything. Yeah? So, for example, here you can find these tags. So if we continue, where do we want to replicate those virtual machines? Well, I select the host cluster, nothing really special there. I can also change the network because maybe on the DR side, the network port group is different. If I already have put my virtual machines there, so to not transfer them over the network, I can seed them. Yeah? And then we come to the policy settings. The policy settings, Ivan explained already in details. Yeah, so you have here the source proxy and the target proxy. You can also run some tests to check on the infrastructure. Yeah, so it will do some statistics and tell how much CPU and RAM and bandwidth you potentially need to replicate the specific virtual machine. So it gives you an idea. And then the schedule, yeah, so 30 seconds, let's say short term, we keep that for 4 hours, and then the long term. Yeah, so this is also the place where we select whether we want to use application or crash consistent snapshots. Yeah, so I could, for example, say, okay, I don't want to run any application consistent during the day, but outside the working hours, I want to run application consistent, or the other way around. So that's up to you. And these restore points we keep for 7 days. Yeah? Get processing, nothing special there. That's just the same as with any other job. And as you can see, things are moving here all the time, because we are basically replicating every X seconds in both jobs, whether they have some data or not. You can see it right here. So it says processing the disks, and you can see if you meet the RPO, so if you're within the time window that we are sending the data from A to B, and how much data was copied, in fact. So, all right. Then, if you want to restore something, you can click here under the replicas, and you just do failover, just as you are used to with the regular replication job. If you then specify point, you will see a different option. In this option, we can choose the latest point. It by default chooses the latest point. I can choose the latest application consistent point, which in my case is every hour on top of the hour. So this is 10 a.m. Or restore to a point in time that I can specify myself. So if you remember, every 30 seconds, as you can see, it switches here 37.5, 38, 38.5. For 4 hours like this, I can go back, and then I will have the other application snapshots. Or I can here click on a restore point, and I will see the application consistent ones. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Now I saw some questions on people asking whether this uses snapshots or not. Yeah, whether you see something in VMware. Well, let's just go and have a look, right? Then you can all see the truth. So if we have a look at the snapshots, there's absolutely no single snapshots here on the virtual machine on the source. And these are the target virtual machines, also 0 snapshots there. Yeah? So how is the data stored? If we have a look on the data store from the replicated virtual machine, and we look into its VM folder, then we will see a whole bunch of files here. So everything is logged into these files. Let's just organize it a bit. And then I can see, so we have these VMDK files. Yeah, we have some metadata, some log files, so the journal into which everything is logged. So everything is stored together with the virtual machine. Yeah? So no snapshots are being used on VMware or on the storage, and not even for application consistency. Yeah, we kind of mark that point as application consistency, and the job or the policy better just continues, right? So that is a quick demo of CDP. You will see that it's running all the time. Yeah, so because it needs to replicate every X seconds, so you will always have this job running. So make sure that you also have enough bandwidth and IOPS at both sides, because this might use some resources. Yeah? Now, if we go to another VBR installation here, then we're going to have a look at our Vcloud plugin. So, for example, I log in as a client in Vcloud Director. Yeah? I can see my virtual machines, and now as a client, I would like to add them to a backup job. So here I have Veeam Data Protection, add to backup job. It loads the jobs that I have already created. So I can just select it, add to the job, and that's about it. Yeah? If we want to have a look at how this looks like, here under more Veeam Data Protection, we will then be looped through, and actually in the back it's the enterprise manager, right? But the user has absolutely no idea, because even the layout, as you can see, the gray blackish, it really feels for the user as if he's still in the same interface. So we can just browse the Enterprise Manager here. We see our jobs. As a user, I can create my jobs here, edit my jobs, but also do my VM restores. I can restore VApps or VMs or disks, or delete them even, and restore files. Items is always a bit more tricky because generally as a service provider, you don't have network access between you and the client. So that's generally another topic for discussion. But as you can see, it's very simple also to install this plugin. You install it in vCloud as any other plugin. You just upload this few kilobytes file and you publish it to the tenants. You add the URL of where the Enterprise Manager is located, and then the rest is magic. So you can just see it right here. So cool. Then another thing on Vcloud Director is that we also support replication jobs. So now you can also replicate from an organization to an organization. So if you would like to offer disaster recovery to your clients from your hosted environment on vCloud to another vCloud on another data center, let's say, or in another country or region, then this now allows you to do that. Before, replication was not an option for vCloud, but now we can select the VApps and we specify a destination, VDC, storage policy, and all the rest is the same as any other replication job. All right. Then the last thing is the immutable repository on Linux. I think for a service provider, something very, very useful here. So if we go and have a look at the repository itself, it looks like any other repository that I have added. But since we can here add this repository with single-use credentials, you can see that these credentials are not even stored in the database of Veeam. So we use them once just to be able to edit, to push the service, and then that's it. The account is never stored into the database. You can even disable SSH on the server, because we do not need to do this anymore. We do not need to communicate anymore unless you want to do some update of this package, right? So that is one thing. Then on the configuration of this repository, you have also seen this already in the slides. This is where we set the option. So we recommend to use fast cloning on XFS and make these backups immutable for X days. So simply said, if we combine that then with, let's say, Vcloud Plugin, or with Vcloud Director, I can offer my clients multiple repositories, because that's also something in version 11 that became available. I can offer in different cities or different data centers a repository, and one of them can, for example, be also the immutable one. So I can tell my client, okay, we have two types, one that you can't delete the backups from for 7, 14, 30 days, or one that you can do and go and delete everything if you really want to. So if we then would go and delete these backups, so make sure I select the correct repository here. And if something goes wrong, hacker or somebody from inside tries to delete a backup on this repository, then everything that is protected by this 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, whatever you had set, cannot be removed. So you will see here in the wizard, it's trying to delete it, and it says, well, I cannot delete it. It's immutable. It can only be deleted after the 16th of February, which is 7 days from now, as I have specified. And on the Linux repository server, just wanted to show you how this looks like. As you can see, I still have enabled SSH, but only from this specific server. But you can even disable that. And I recommend that you disable this one as well. But you will see on the server, these are my backups, and you'll see that it has the immutable flag at the end So these files cannot be deleted anymore. And to make you believe it, right, we only talk over this port anymore. We don't need SSH to update anything. We only talk over this port. You can see that the service itself was running under the initial user that I have added, but the immutable service is running under the root. So basically only the root can delete something. And from that point, I don't need the user anymore to be in sudo. So I can also mark that out. Yeah. So that was it for my quick demo. Let me pass it back to Ivan or Kate. There you go.
Yeah, just a second. Let me get back the control. Yeah, thank you, Peter, for demonstrating v11 key capabilities. As mentioned earlier, there is over 150 new and enhanced features coming with v11. And during the webinar, we just scratched the surface. A lot more is coming, so check it out with the new RTM version that will be released in the next few days. There are a few pricing updates to know about. Custom Kubernetes backup is now available in the VCSP price book. It will be 1 node for 320 points. Currently, there is a 50 node minimum on all deals. We also made changes to NAS backup. When you upgrade to v11, NAS backup will be licensed at much more valuable consumption rate, 500 gigs for 10 rental points. Previously, we had 250 gigs for 10 points. And finally, together with version 11 release, we are making Veeam for Azure available to VCSPs. Azure will be included into rental price list and will consume Cloud VM at 11 points. Please contact your local Veeam sales rep with pricing or product questions. All right, so that will be almost it from us. So we will wrap it up and talk about the next steps. On ProPartner Portal, we launched version 11 Resource Center, where you can find on-demand trainings, customer-ready v11 deck, FAQs, marketing tools, and more. So make sure to check it out. Apart from that, just recently, we launched VCSP Technical Enablement Sessions, a series of live webinars provided by our cloud system engineers. Webinars are focused on new product releases, best practices, backup and disaster recovery as a service use cases, and much more. So our next session will be about cybersecurity. Make sure you sign up and don't miss out. So we do see a lot of questions popping up in the chat, so we will go ahead and answer them now. So don't hesitate to contact us via hosting.emea@veeam.com in case of any other questions. And I would like to thank everyone for your time and continuous partnership. Thank you, Peter and Ivan, for giving a great overview of version 11. Slides and recording will be provided in a follow-up to all attendees. And we also look forward to seeing you on our next webinar on March 9 about security. Thank you very much for attending.